Hey, Lois!
Yeah, this title's not clickbait. Dead by Daylight is disgustingly survivor-sided, and it's basically objectively so at this point. Unlike other DBD YouTubers, I'm not gonna waste your time with a 15-minute intro. So get your yapping and ragebait comments ready, cause I'm getting right into this waste bucket. Before we start talking about perks, which is obviously the most discussed part of Survivor, since it's the only real customization options they have, let's first begin with how even if survivors couldn't bring any perks, this game would still be survivor-sided against 80% of killers, if I'm being honest. For one, survivors have an objective that is much easier than the killer objective. Despite the fact that killers get a slightly faster movement speed than survivors, survivors spend less time traversing the map to get to their objective because generators spawn in fixed spots and do not move. Not to mention, multiple generators can be done at once, and it takes literally no effort to repair a generator. Finding survivors that play immersed is miserable and time-consuming, and chases against pre-dropping survivors can last ages considering the pallet density update. More than enough time for the rest of survivors to finish 3 gens the moment you take them down. While it does probably take less time for you to find, down, and hook a survivor if you're playing a good chase or mobility killer, the fact that 2 to 3 generators could be worked on in the meantime jumpstarts the math well in the survivor's favor. Let's not even mention how you have to hook survivors 12 times in order to actually win the game, while survivors just have to repair 5 generators and power an exit gate in order to win. And while the killer has to do everything themselves, survivors can rely on their teammates in order to do their share objective. I know that seems like a no shit moment, this game is an asymmetrical multiplayer game after all, but like, the numbers in this game are not balanced around its asymmetrical nature, which seems intentional. At a certain point, you start to realize that it's nearly impossible to win when you're juggling 4 survivors at once. Unless you're Singularity, but even then, that takes unbelievable amounts of reflexes and game sense compared to the lackluster amount of effort survivors are putting to hard counter you in their meta swift. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that there are ways to get around how slow your objective can be as killer, like playing Blight, or other than that, you can use Agitation or Forever Entwine, which tremendously speed up your hooking times. Hell, they're very popular in comp for that very reason, but they cut into your slowdown perks, which are basically mandatory for obvious reasons. You can play hit and run on a high mobility killer, but since healing speeds are so fucked right now, that you will spend more time trying to force resets than time is wasted by survivors themselves resetting. You can try to hold a 3-gen with Singularity, Plague, or Twins and gradually wear survivors down, a strategy that was extremely effective during the 3-gen meta, the only killer-sided meta. But even during the Singularity Nightlight stream that happened about a year ago, if you watch the entire thing, you realize that he basically failed to hold a 3-gen on all the maps that weren't Dead Dog Saloon. Not to mention how the primary add-on he used, which is Soma Family Photo, to force resets forever has been gutted beyond recognition. Just because Nightlight, a player with thousands of hours in this game, held Team Eternal captive for 20-something minutes does not mean this is a viable playstyle right now, especially with the removal of map offerings and hyper-focused stakeout. Okay, so none of the fair strategies are working out right now, so maybe let's dive into the toxic playstyles. The kind of stuff that's gonna get your maps downvoted on the heckin' wholesome r/Dead by Daylight. Does that help to tip the scale? No. This is where we talk about the hundreds of perks survivors have in order to counter any shortcut you have to painstakingly attempting to 12 hook them every match and getting 4-outed. This is another part of the video that some might find controversial, right? I mean, tunneling, camping, and slugging are mean and only used by evil people. Dev words, not mine. So what's the problem with a few perks meant to counter some annoying playstyles? Well, as just stated, these toxic playstyles aren't used to be evil. They're used because the process of playing nice is so time-consuming, it's basically on par with shooting yourself in the foot. Because right now, even daring to look at the survivor the wrong way will lead to your downfall. To start with, Shoulder the Burden is the strongest perk in Dead by Daylight, offering a ridiculously powerful effect with barely any downside, especially with Vigil. This perk alone basically eliminates tunneling as an option within a match. Not to mention the 5-second buff to the post-unhooked buffer window, and perks like Borrowed Time, which was not nerfed despite being made partially base kit. Off the Record, Babysitter, and various other assorted anti-tunnel perks basically eliminate tunneling as a strategy. On the same note, slugging is a strategy that started because of how long hooking takes, especially on some killers that really can't spare the time like Twins, Singularity, or Pinhead. Did behavior create more of an incentive for hooking to prevent this strategy from being too powerful? No. Slugging is basically impossible on most killers thanks to busted healing speeds from perks like Botany Knowledge and Do No Harm. Not to mention overtuned anti-slugging perks like Unbreakable, Conviction, and Plot Twist. And with 70-second hook stages, Resurgence, and base kit anti-camp being buffed, you basically can't do that unless you are really good at naturally camping, like Bubba or Houndmaster. And look, I get it. If you're a Survivor main watching this video, for one, I applaud you, but also you might be grateful that these strategies have become so much weaker over the years, because they are boring to go against. But I will also ask you this: what do you think killers should do to replace that strategy? If it was to chase, hook, repeat, then why have we nerfed perks like DMS and Pop until recently on this PTB? And punish taking chases with survivors by buffing all exhaustion perks via Vigil? On that note, why hasn't a replacement strategy popped up that is just as viable while still being fun, or maybe buffing the strategies that are actually fun? Instead, behavior doesn't seem to know what carrots are on this carrot on a stick thing. They don't seem to realize that Discord is a thing, or how this game is not just a bunch of 1v1s, it's a 1v4. Playing killer is like playing an impossible maze. No matter what path you take, you're gonna get clowned on. Play nice? Fuck you. Play defensively and hold an area? Fuck you. Try to snowball the match? Fuck you. Albeit, I am exaggerating just a little bit, there is one way through this maze, and it's playing Blight, as I said previously. Blight may be the main thing on your mind when I say this game is Survivor-sided. You might even be pulling up the 1,000 plus win streak that Momo7 did in 2022. Blight is basically not affected by most of, if any, of these changes. He can traverse the map unconditionally, like lightning, which makes it way easier to control a map and contest 3 gens. He doesn't care about distance, he will not give a shit about your post-unhook buffer window since he is literally the Flash. He'll just tunnel you anyway. Unlike other strong killers, he has both absurd anti-loop and absurd map pressure, making him be able to take on basically all perk types. Normally 4 perks on killer isn't enough to counter possibly 16 unique perks, but since Blight hard counters so much with his kit alone, that it feels like actually enough. Moreover, he is possibly the only killer that can comfortably 12 hook every game. This killer is absolutely busted. He's a compy favorite for a reason, and he's probably the strongest killer in the game. However, have y'all heard about an exception? Are int Faith builds in Elden Ring good because of the funny yellow disc spell, despite the fact that the rest of the int Faith spells are worthless garbage? No? Just because we have one killer that can demolish solo queue and stand up to Swift does not mean that the rest of the killers can even dream of that. Some might under very specific circumstances though. Blight is an exception, not the rule. Hell, with how this game has been balanced as of late, he genuinely might be the only balanced killer left against Swift. Watch that be taken out of context by the Twitter mob. On that line of thinking, I am also sick of how DBD is balanced around survivors being idiots. Like, think about it. On a game like Overwatch, people will usually make their tier list around high-level players. Duh. Because they're high-level players with thousands of hours in the game. So why do most DBD tier lists seem to balance around all lobbies? Like, people will rank Pinhead, Springtrap, Vecna, or even Krasu very highly solely on survivors not learning their counterplay. Like, aren't we all players with thousands of hours in this game? If an Overwatch player made their tier list around bronze players, they would be laughed out of the room. What makes DBD different? Well, Overwatch has a functional MMR system, which honestly is what makes DBD as killer as playable as it is, honestly. Imagine you play with a real MMR system as Ghostface, and you cannot get past Silver. Another thing to note is that Survivor players tend to be more casual and worse at the game than killer players, or just take the game less seriously in general. Plus the DC epidemic that we're in right now, that makes the game objectively more killer-sided, and yet kill rates are still 50% right now, which is not only below the measured 60% that behavior apparently wants killers to have. So imagine what kill rates would look like with accurate MMR and no DCs. God, I struggle to imagine that without having a mental collapse. If this game was truly a party game, it wouldn't have an MMR system. What competitive game is built around one side being too stupid to understand the counterplay, and half the people you fight just being bots? That's an insanely stupid concept that behavior has nailed into this game by refusing to meet the needs of either the competitive or casual players truly. And with those notes cleared up, you may be starting to see my side here on why this game is so survivor-sided in spite of all the bullshit strawman excuses. Let's talk about the DBD community for a second, and no, this will not turn into the why survivor mains are bad as people video. there are a million of those already, and how so many people are so sensitive to the concept that they will immediately wave him as us versus them nonsense. Well, to start, I'm a killer main. That's the end of that sentence. I define us versus them as toxicity, and critiquing people that want to nerf the add-ons on a C-tier killer is not toxicity, nor is it even really biased. Honestly, us versus them is so overblown as an issue as it stands, and I honestly believe that trying to suppress it is pointless, and we might as well just not take it too seriously. Like, look at how Overwatch DPS mains complaining about Mercy pick-me's, and support mains calling hit scans pred scans. It's just stupid banter, and I don't think we should be offended by this level of trash talk. This kind of discussion about censorship and pseudo-toxicity and oversensitivity will have to wait for another day, though. This comes from the fact that quite a few so-called killer mains really don't want to piss off survivor mains in this community, because they are a huge part of this community. So they constantly downplay how strong survivors are and will always complain about those nasty add-ons on C-tier killers, like, Kaneki Sir is brain dead, am I right, survivor mains? Like, this was the philosophy that got Springtrap's add-ons nerfed despite him being a miserably weak killer. Because God forbid the killer has any kind of strength whatsoever, only Blight is allowed to have that strength. I've learned this over the past 3 years of playing this game at this point. Why nerf Shredded Notes and Alchemist Ring when you could just gut Vanishing Box instead? This philosophy has brought us dog shit like the Release Myers rework, the current Trickster rework, and the unknown 9.2.0 changes. Just unnecessary compensation nerfs that arguably nerf the killer they are trying to buff. On that note, let me finish this off with talking about Behavior's role in this. Obviously, they make the game, and I also sort of get why they would appeal so much to Survivor as a studio. Survivor's just raking the dough. Think about it, would you rather design and balance a killer kit with multiple unique and creative powers, create a unique visual design, set of music themes, polish animations, 20 add-ons, and perks? Only to get a fraction of money of just releasing the 17th Gunnar Catgirl Saber Ward skin. I figured. Behavior is a business, and appealing to the widest demographic by doing the least is just good business. I sort of envy them, to be honest. If you could get away with no new balance changes for 6 months while just releasing weird Gunnar skins and having 90% of the fanbase, especially the characters on DBD Twitter, eat it up because having expectations is extremely difficult. It's why 2v8 always gets extended, despite it absolutely wrecking killer queue times while just making the mode more survivor-sided with tonics and escapist. It's why we barely get any killer balance changes and updates, and why 3/4 of the roster is in the dumps due to bugs or general negligence. It's why all the community managers are survivor mains and call killer mains evil for slugging. Behavior is desperately trying to chase survivor money with no shame about the killers they leave behind, and it fucking sucks. These issues won't be solved possibly ever, because why would they? Even if they completely deleted the killer role from the game, 80% of the player base would still be happy by nature. But it would be nice to get something once in a while, right? Whatever. I'm just gonna hold on to Singularity for as long as I can before it gets gutted beyond recognition to please the Twitter mob. And when that happens, I'll probably just give in and play Blight because Behavior clearly wants me to do that. This has been Box Cutter, and this rant has been pretty fun, but I gotta see myself out while I still can. Good night.